So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to David
Beardmore
from Tesco. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Right, and just make sure the tech is all working. That is, so the mic's working. So look, absolutely delighted to be here today. I thought I'd just quickly introduce my colleagues as well. So we've got Charlotte, we've got Paul, Ellie and Chrissy in terms of our team here today. We cover all of our food manufacturing and buying aspects of Tesco and also innovation as well. So Paul looks after our innovation part of our business, actually bringing entrepreneurs and new brands into our business. So that's the team that's with us today. I'm David Beardmore. I am the Impulse Director at Tesco. The Impulse category is basically anything that is unhealthy, yeah? So anything that all our customers love to eat, that kind of sits under me. So things like soft drinks, chocolate, yeah, crisps, yeah, biscuits, sugar confectionery, and then things like chilled juice as well, crisp snacks and nuts. So all of those categories kind of sit under my area. So look, I spent half of my career as a supplier, and my early careers I spent at a company called Covent Garden Soup, which in those days was kind of classed as a small business. We never really called them entrepreneurs. But actually, I worked in a very small business, and actually I understand some of those struggles of trying to get in to some of our big retailers. But I spent half of my career as a supplier. I then realized that if you can't beat them, join them. So I decided to join Tesco, and I've been with Tesco for about 30, nearly 14 years now. I spent 5 years, or just coming up to 5 years, in Thailand. So I was running the packaged food business over in Thailand. Came back during COVID, which was an interesting period to come back into the UK to run our grocery business. And then for the last couple of years, as the government had developed a load of legislation around healthy eating. We call it HFSS, high fat, sugar and salt. And because I started a lot of that work before I left for Thailand, they decided to put me into the category where we've got the most legislation to try and, I think I was also the biggest category director as well. So they thought, yeah, you can have Impulse. So look, today we're going to do, really it's about advice. How do you kind of talk to retailers, yeah? What are the things that you need to do that really help you get through the door? And particularly with Tesco, we have lots of feedback from our supply partners to say, you know what, as an entrepreneur trying to get into Tesco, it's been pretty difficult over the years. And actually, we've developed a whole range of areas to say, well, actually, look, how do entrepreneurs come to the business? How do we link with people like Paul to actually give you an accelerated way into the business? And actually, how do we be a really good force for change in the UK? You know, we have 330,000 employees in the UK, and we want to make sure not only is our colleague base a diverse colleague base, but also how do we make sure that our supplier base is a diverse colleague base as well? So we're going to do a bit of a kind of dual run. So Shagan, who runs and owns Jim Kitchen, is going to do it as a duo. So I would say we're going to be the hottest pairing in town. He's going to do it online. I'm going to do it here. Yeah, it's either going to be terrible, yeah, or it's going to work. Is that all right? So we'll see if it works. But look, there are a number of things that I would quite like to go through. So we've broken it down into different stages, yeah? Makes it a bit easier, which is stage one is about kind of setting the vision and those first initial conversations with a retailer. How do we do that? The second one is about scaling up. How do you scale up that business? How do you have those commercial conversations with Tesco? Never easy, but actually, what are those areas that we're going to really help you with? And then the third one is about things like technical considerations. You know, how do you make your products? How do you make sure they're safe? How do you make sure they're legal? How do we make sure that we have really good and high standards for customers when they're buying our products? And then the fourth one is around scaling up. How do we scale up your business? Yeah, and then look, I've had a number of experiences with entrepreneurs. I was the first, it is my claim to fame, but I was the first retailer to list Fever Tree, yeah, in the UK. We worked with Tim and Charles. Our business is now worth, it's got a valuation of over £1.5 billion. It came from nothing, by the way. Yeah, it came from an idea that was really solid. If you think about Prime last year, Prime came from nothing, but it absolutely turned upside down the way in which food marketing is done. Yeah, now we took about £25 million last year on that Prime, but remember, the brand wasn't even invented 24 months ago. Yeah, so there is opportunity, and we need to think about how do we not only think about the brands that we've got and the product, but actually how do we market them as well? And then the final one, kind of talking to retailers, talking to people like me and the team. Do you want to sit down as well? Or I'm just conscious you're standing there like attention. I'm just like, that's not, but I do want you to contribute. So just out of interest, before we start, who has a product? Yeah, there's some people being fun. That is in food and drink. Okay. And of those, are you in retailers already? Okay. Who's got an idea but not a product? Okay. They're good as well, by the way. Yeah. Who's in services? Okay. Who's in media? Anyone? Okay, good. So what are the other areas that I've missed out? Fashion. Makeup. Health. Tech. Social sector. Now, skincare. Health and wellness. Wow. Now, the good thing about Tesco, I reckon we're in most of those, apart from social services and those areas. Yet, yeah. Yet. Pretty much everywhere. So look, when you talk about makeup, when you talk about health and beauty, when you talk about food or drinks, this is where our scale really does count, yeah? And it's people like Paul. I keep pointing to Paul, yeah? Because it's not just about product, it's about the ideas, yeah? And where I've always found we have real good engagement is where if you can talk to us about ideas, we can help you. Yeah, the entrepreneurs that listen and change stuff are the people that we can work with. If you've got a fixed view of your product, and many entrepreneurs have a fixed view, and you say, any chance you could just change that? And they go, no. And you're like, really? It's like, without going, have you seen the name above the door? Yeah, and they're like, no, don't want to change it, not going to change it. And you go, that's fine. But actually, it's those entrepreneurs that are prepared to listen. Yeah, we got a huge amount of data, we got a huge amount of research, we got a huge customer database that really can help, and it can help you navigate to not only being successful, but actually building your brands in the UK. So, Shagan's going to talk a little bit about Gym Kitchen, and then that first section, and then we'll take each section, and we'll do the questions in each section. Is that all right? Perfect. Over to you.
Hey guys, my name's Shagan Akinwoliola, and I'm the founder of a brand called the Gym Kitchen. Our ranges are sold across a number of different supermarkets. They're all high in protein, lower in calories, but most importantly, taste amazing. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, albeit virtually, just helping you and sharing a few thoughts on the journey of actually getting your products from manufacturer to retailer, but in fact, actually, before we even get anywhere near that, what the things you should be thinking about.
Okay.
Right,
there you go.
So step one we've titled Setting the Vision and the Initial Retailer Conversations, right? So one of the great examples that I love to use as part of my journey is when I first started this brand, I was thinking about doing this proposition which was called just add good carbs. So you'd have your meat and then you'd walk around the supermarket and pick up rice, and then you'd kind of add it with it at home because that's kind of what resembled meal prep. But actually, that wasn't what customers really wanted. And I only found this out by actually speaking to the retailers when I'd go to meetings for some of the other people I was working for, etc. I also asked customers. I stood outside gyms and fitness centres and said, would you buy this proposition? And they were like, oh, it's a bit confusing. So the value in actually speaking to these retailers and to your individual customers or target audience means so much to you, because imagine spending 4 or 5 years going down a path in a wrong direction and then getting a listing in a retailer and it absolutely doesn't work because you haven't done the research behind it. Then there's almost this thing of, how do you actually want to build the business? Are you taking venture capitalist funding where it's all about building a business fast, growth so that you can sell it on? Or are you trying to have longevity? Because that will change your business model. You know, where do you want to see yourself? Do you want to see yourself as a cross-category business like we consider ourselves? Or do you want to see yourselves as a one-category business and just do something, just core focus on that individual kind of area? And then it's almost about, what's the market? What is actually your USP? What do you stand for? So for us, it was about protein. It's about low in calories. It's about great tasting, healthier alternatives. But the USP and the feedback are probably the two most important things, because without a real, true, unique selling point, you don't really stand for anything and you'll get lost. I've seen so many brands, and I'm going to use an example of a drink, for instance. Why would you just launch another orange juice when there's a market leader in orange juice and all you'll be doing is really comparing yourself on price? But actually, if your USP was to involve orange juice with some sort of twist and some sort of unique superfood ingredient, then you've got something different that then commands that, price point that kind of almost brings it up, and then that brings that newer, more functional shopper into the category. The last thing I'd say is meeting and networking with these individuals. And the individuals I talk about are buyers, but also manufacturers. There's places like Bread and Jam Festival. There are things like Foundervine, where you can actually go and retailers will be there. They are human beings just like we are. They will sit and they will talk to you and they will tell you what they think about it. One of the things to flag is not everybody is right. Everybody speaks from their own opinion, but they will speak from what they are seeing within the category that they kind of sit and they kind of interact with. So getting that feedback early doors is super, super important, and I would say goes a long way in terms of setting you up for what the next steps could look like.
Perfect. Thank you. See? Came back in on time. There you go. So look, the kind of areas that we really wanted just to focus on this stage one was around setting the vision, that initial retailer conversations. Retailer engagement and feedback, how do we get that feedback? How do you come to us? And there are lots of different areas in which you can engage, Most of the buying community now are on either Facebook or LinkedIn. Particularly LinkedIn is always an area where I get the first level of introduction. And they're good sources. But also things like industry conferences, So if you are in and you've got products, then actually there are some conferences that are relatively low cost that you can go along to, and then you'll hear a number of the buying managers and category directors speak at those. So things like the British soft drinks, if you're in a soft drinks category, then there'll be a number of different conferences like the water conference or the soft drinks conference, where again, it's a good opportunity like today where you're networking. The other one is obviously kind of the communities that we all work in, and then you start understanding other brands that are in your same space. How can you get the connection through other brands? But this bit about feedback is really important, because those early conversations just help you to still fine-tune your customer proposition, your product, making sure that actually some of those really easy wins are taken from the retailer. Most of us have a view of products that we buy day in and day out. The one thing about buyers are they're very broad, as in their knowledge is very broad, Whereas if you work with a large manufacturer, most of our manufacturers' understanding is very deep, So they understand the makeup of their product. They understand the P&L. They understand how those products go from raw ingredient to finished materials. Most buyers don't have that level of depth in the supplier base. Most buyers understand trends. They understand what's working. They understand where certain ingredients are coming into either season or into trend, into favour. They actually see kind of where are the gaps in the market. So actually getting in front of buyers is actually really important because they will give you that information because they do quite like to talk. And therefore, establish your distinct market presence. It's not just about saying, I think I've got the best orange juice in the marketplace. You probably have in your world. Yeah, and I don't mean to be, it's like, it's tough sometimes when you see the 14th orange juice that comes through the door and they absolutely hell-bent on saying, that's the best orange juice. Yeah, I'm sure it is. The reason why certain brands, I think, succeed is because they're really clear on what their proposition is, what is the need for that product, yeah? And I'm going to use Fever Tree because it's a tonic water that most people probably have heard of. But when I first saw them, they said, we want to go into tonic water. And you're like, yeah, we've got Schweppes and we've got Tesco. We're tonic watered out. We don't need any more. And they're like, no, you don't understand, David. Because over the years, companies like Schweppes and Coca-Cola and others, not being disparaging to them, have taken the quality of these products down. Yeah? They're no longer made with spring water. They're no longer made with real quinine. Yeah? They're no longer in a glass bottle. Yeah? And they had this wonderful marketing plan, which was 2/3 of your drink is made up by tonic water. So why buy something that's relatively cheap when you're spending 40, 50 pounds on a spirit? So that was their kind of thought. And then they kind of said to me, oh, so we're gonna source the real ingredients. Quinine is going to be the essence of the product. Does anyone know what the tree is called that it produces quinine? No. It's called the fever tree. Yeah. And you're like, oh, hang on a minute, this is all this. Now, it might have been a massive ploy to say, yeah, of course it is, yeah. But I still believe it to this day, yeah. But actually, you start to see how that proposition, yeah, starts to build. Yeah, they have gone from nothing to a valuation. In fact, their valuation pre-COVID was close to 3 billion. I mean, it was off the scale. Yeah, they've just launched in the US, but it is about establishing your distinct market presence. Coca-Cola hasn't got anywhere near them. That's Coca-Cola. Yeah, in their Schweppes brand. So it is possible. Yeah, and it is very, very. I wouldn't say it's easy, but that's taken probably, what, Paul, 15 years? From nothing to be the clear market leader and ahead of a brand like Coca-Cola, as in that section. And then network within industry experts, yeah? Try and get out to understand, the elements of your product. Why does it need to be in a certain packaging? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? What are some of the legislation that's coming down the road? So all of those are really important in terms of just defining what your product is, getting as much information back from retailers, because then when you go back to them with that redefined proposition, it's much harder for a buyer to say no when they've given you advice. So, scaling up.
Okay, so then on to step 2, which I call scaling up, and the commercial considerations which go with that. Now, the first thing you have to think about when you are talking to a retailer is, do I understand how I'm going to get this product from here onto the retailer's shelves? And is it actually going to work for me? Is it actually going to be financially viable as a proposition to work? So if you start off by thinking, okay, how many stores has a retailer got? Tesco, probably about 4,000 stores. a significant proportion of express stores, etc. You could think, actually, I'm an on-the-go solution, so express is where it's at for me. Or you could think I'm a regional proposition where it's only going to work in a certain area like London or Devon or somewhere like that, because it's all about provenance, it's all about area. So once you've kind of got that mapped out, you then go, okay, what does this mean for what I need to be selling to make it work? When you start to build a business, a manufacturer, or whether you have a factory of your own or whether you find a third-party manufacturer, they will kind of almost put you into this bucket of how important are they. If you're doing fresh food, obviously that will be produced every couple of days. If you're doing long life stuff, it will be there'll be an MOQ. So you might have to press the button on 50,000 cans to get a drinks product into your shops. Can you afford to do that? Will you justify the price point to ensure that sells? And then I come back onto the factory. You start to talk about kind of almost, have you set up by yourself or are you using a third-party manufacturer? One thing that you cannot do with a retailer is let a retailer down. So if, say, for instance, you can only produce 50,000 units of a product a year, and Tesco decide that they're going to put you in 4,000 stores, what if that looks like 1.2 million units a year? Can you fulfill that? These are the things that you have to have to think about. One of the important things, well, really important things, is actually that end price, right? So we're in a really sensitive environment at the moment. Cost of living, inflation, just all sorts of craziness, obviously coming out of COVID, Brexit, Windsor agreements, blah, 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 and so on. Now, the retail price is so important. Can you afford to sell this product at a price that it will actually sell out? Retailers are tasked on rate of sale. So rate of sale is how many units per store will you sell per week. Let's say the average is in drinks, I'm making this up, but let's just say it's 10. If you are not 10 or above, then you are not selling at the rate that the buyer needs to justify you to be on the shelves. And the best way to get there is to ensure that the price that the customer is going to purchase this at is as competitive as it probably can be. Now, the cost implications on your end are the obviously fact that you would have to make less because you don't have these significant economies of scale. So it's making sure that you are completely, kind of justified and, kind of it works for you. And then the last thing, I guess, is, kind of almost like accounts and history, etc. So just ensuring that you've got 2-3 years of accounts, you're working with people that haven't gone bankrupt, and you're going to be able to, it's really the safety point, it's ensuring that you're actually able to consistently sell to the Tesco, to Tesco's or whichever other retailer you're working with.
Okay, so scaling up, really important. There's some really good points that were made. So consider logistics, yeah? Once you've got that magic yes from the buyer, how are you going to start moving the product into what we would call our network, yeah? So who's going to do your distribution? Have you got a third-party warehouse? Who's going to do your logistics? Are we going to do your logistics? Because sometimes we can do what we call primary. So we use our trucks to come and collect. Or are you going to use your own vehicles to supply? So there's a whole load of considerations there, because that will also impact on things like the cost price that you sell to Tesco as well. The lead time. Can you get an order on day 1 and produce it for day 3 and deliver it? But if you're in fresh foods, for example, it's day 1 for day 2. And you might get it tonight for tomorrow's delivery. Might be quite quick as well, by the way, so you've got to be able to react very quickly. The other one is about creating that, how big is your business, So if we automatically start seeing a product sell and it goes from 50 stores to 1,000 stores, you've got to make sure that you've got cash. Yeah, that actually we don't, by just taking the orders, that all of a sudden you run out of cash. And I heard it earlier on, actually, in the session with NatWest earlier, which is you've got to really understand that cash cycle. Because a retailer like Tesco and the big other retailers, because if you start selling, actually you've got to make sure that you understand that cash cycle. You understand where the payment days are as well. And therefore, getting a realistic forecast is really important. I say to quite a few of the entrepreneurs that I speak to, is sometimes Tesco's not always the first place to go for a listing. I know it's everywhere, and I know it's great. We've got lots of different formats, and it's the thing that most entrepreneurs, particularly in food or health, beauty, and wellness kind of thing, I want to be on the shelves of Tesco. That's great. We'd like you to be on the shelves of Tesco. But it's about, have you got a robust business model that sits behind it? Yeah, and it's really important you do. So sometimes I say to some entrepreneurs that come in, have you done some equity building? Where is your brand? Is it in Selfridges? Is it in Harrods Food Hall? Is it in, some upmarket delis? Have you got an understanding of the rates of sale? So when you come to my team, actually, you say, yeah, I know in these stores that broadly the rates of sale is X. We know those stores. So we know what our factor would be on top of that. Yeah, so we can help you. But it does start to build a much more realistic forecast in terms of what it needs to be. And then kind of financial supply chain, as part of those early conversations, make sure you do ask what the category profitability looks like, yeah? Because you don't want to kind of get all the way down here and go, oh yeah, Tesco or other retailers, yeah, you're only going to make 5%. It's like, what? Oh, my category makes 35%, yeah? So there is something here which is really understand how the market that you operate in, what are the margins, yeah? What's the profitability as a percentage of sales, percentage of cost that the retailer makes, yeah? Because that will be an important part of it. And actually, stability in supply chain is what I class as the fundamental. So it's quality first, then it's service. And everything else is on top of that. And the reason I say that, I send an email, Paul's laughing, to every one of my suppliers every week to tell them what their service level is. And the reason is because we expect great service. Because if we get great service, 98.5% of what we order comes in, we can tell our colleagues that, that product will be in on those days regularly. It really helps them filling the shelves, being able to know what's coming in. If you have a service level at 50%, I have to tell them what they're going to have to face over. So stability in supply is really important, yeah? And so making sure that you've got a really robust supply chain and that you're talking to the buyers, because if changes do happen, whether you're scaling up, yeah, or sometimes even scaling down, that actually you understand that impact on your business. So they're really important. Financial in terms of particularly around early doors, getting into the buying teams to understand what are their core metrics that they're looking at. Stage 3, technical considerations.
Okay, so now on to stage 3, which is titled Technical Considerations, right? Now, this is, again, I'm probably going to keep saying that these are the most important points because everything here is probably equally as important as I think about it. Now, we had a massive issue where we worked with a manufacturer and then they lost their BRC. So what a BRC is, it's a kind of almost like they're a regulatory body, right, where they ensure that every factory meets a specific standard. So this might mean ensuring that they've got the right safety equipment, that their processes are correct, that their cleaning down is correct. So you have to have, if you've got your own factory, this accreditation, or you work with manufacturers who've got this accreditation. It's well known across the industry, and there are different levels to it. You know, you've got a BRC-C, which is obviously less stringent, and then obviously if you're a massive manufacturer, you've got BRC like AA, where they can come in and just, you know, kind of audit you or at any time in the day. Now, ensuring that they have these is super important because it flags that they are doing everything correctly to ensure they can sell to a retailer. So where I talk about we had a manufacturer that lost that, I then had to go to Tesco and say, unfortunately, we can no longer sell this product to you because the manufacturer that we were working with has lost their BRC and pulled the products from the shelves. Terrible, terrible time. But that's how important it is that they have BRC and that every year they are consistently renewing that BRC. As part of it, have a look at, you know, kind of almost what's happened previously. You know, product recalls are massive. So if something happens where a stone or plastic has been found in a product, you've got to get this out straight away, right? Then you look at ingredient sourcing and those kind of requirements. You know, what is it that you need? You know, organic certified. That's a specific kind of almost regulatory body as well. So you've got to get that organic certified. Is it gluten-free certified? That's then different as well. You can't put claims on these products without them actually going through the different processes or speaking to the right bodies to do that. But then it even comes back to just the standard stuff, like almost like we claim protein on our products. And in order to get a high protein claim, it's 20% of the energy is to come from the calories in order to be able to do that. So we have to send these products off for testing to make sure that they are actually claimed high in protein. And these tests cost 300 quid per product. So they are costly. So you need to make sure that they do that because otherwise trading standards might pick a product out, send it off, hear that you're claiming it incorrectly, which has happened to quite a few brands in the news, and then, you know, kind of tell you you've got to fix it or pull your products off the shelves. We go into intellectual property. Obviously, food is very, very hard unless you've got something super unique. Obviously, within beauty, you might have an IP around a recipe, etc. So the IP within food really is the trademark. So you can go on the IPO website and you can easily register a trademark, do a bit of a search. It guides you through it. Costs about £200-300 depending on what it is. But this is the most important thing. You know, we've seen other retailers rip off brands or use other brand names. So as much as you can protect it as you can will be amazing. But also think about protecting names that could potentially be similar to your brand proposition as well, because then at least you've got the protection around it in case someone tries to sneak off and do something a little bit different. And then there are things like Brexit and Windsor, you know, kind of agreements, which just prop up and turn up all of a sudden. So Brexit was all about, you know, kind of almost the restriction of trade now and not being able to sell to Europe as easily as we can. So the increase in paperwork. Windsor Agreement is now not being able to sell to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, etc. So these implications can really, really, you know, kind of impact you in specific ways in terms of the volume that you ship out. Imagine all your business is export. Imagine all your business is Northern Ireland. So just got to be careful and understand that in a bit more detail.
Right, who's been put off by that? Yeah? I mean, look, legislation is a really difficult one, yeah? There is a lot of legislation, particularly around food and drink. Even a very simple bottle of water requires a huge amount of legislation, yeah, to go through. So industry compliance, quality control, really important. As I said, the kind of basics are quality first service. Quality is all about making sure that we've got the right standards, the certifications that you need. How does it make you unique? Are you following the right legislation? Do you want to be putting it into Europe as well as into somewhere like Northern Ireland, and therefore what are the different agreements, whether it's the Windsor Agreement or whether it's Brexit? What intellectual property have you got? Have you got legal claim over that intellectual property? What are you doing with packaging waste? Yeah, the materials that you've got, making sure that you've got some of the so if you're in I'll call it a bottle of water, you know, how much recycled PET is in your product versus non-recycled PET. So there's a lot of industry as well as external factors that come into play. But that is part of the legislation, the frameworks that we operate in. A couple of more that are kind of coming into here at the moment. You've heard of high fat, sugar and salt, HFSS legislation. It doesn't actually currently exist in Scotland and Wales, but actually they've got a consultation paper at the moment looking to go even further than that. So you could have different legislation in the devolved nations of the UK. And actually just making sure attention to detail is there. Number of times that we've had to, again, say to businesses, we need you to change the packaging because you're outside of the legislation because they haven't either picked it up, making sure that everything from, if you're doing an emergency product withdrawal, forbid that you are going to have to do that, but again, making sure that you understand what the codes are on the product, when it's been manufactured, when it came into each of the retailers, how much of the stock have they got. Quite a large amount of admin. So again, are you resourced up to be really able to do this when you're talking to big retailers, yeah? Maybe slightly different when you're talking to some of the smaller retailers. So, logistics.
And then number four, so scaling up, and this is the logistical elements, right? So a lot of people don't understand that when you start to work with a retailer like Tesco, depending on how you're set up, of course, there are specific ways in which they do the invoicing, which they do the ordering, etc. So there's a system called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange. And what happens is it's almost like a transition between the order system straight to your back end. Some of these systems from your end can cost between kind of £750 depending on how many lines you've got, up into kind of the double-digit thousands type thing, triple-digit thousands, depending on who you are. But these are the things that you need to understand, that it's not like a wholesaler where you can manually type an invoice up and then ping that onto the retailer and then hope that they're going to pay you. They go through the system. So there are obviously ways around this in terms of, you might find a manufacturer that's got a supplier code already set up and you might do it through them, or you might work with a distributor that can help you do that back end as well. But in terms of setting up directly as a supplier with Tesco, that is super, super important. Then you've got to think about the warehousing and the logistics and how you actually get the product to Tesco, right? So the one thing I always encourage is try and work with manufacturers who already do this, so that then you can almost like learn and piggyback off the back of them in some way, shape or form. But we learned when we were working with our one of our manufacturers in one product area, and we were all getting set up as a supplier, etc. And we learned that we had to use Tesco Primary to get the products there. And Tesco Primary is almost like a backhaul solution where they come and pick the product up, or you put the product into one depot and then they will forward that product onto the rest of the different depots around the country. And it's a nice, efficient way of you not having to take your products and drive into all the depots. And you might not understand what depot means. So the depots are where all of the products are stored and then distributed out to stores. So the products don't, only within bakery, I think it is, or some other categories where people go direct and actually sell the products to the stores. In most other instances, they go to these big depots and then they sell the product, and then they send the products onto the store. So there's probably like 7 or 8 depots across the country. Daventry, I believe, is one of the biggest ones, and Doncaster, I think, is also up there as well. And that's then allowing them to manage their logistics. But you've got to remember that there are also things behind the scenes in terms of making sure that you're going to get paid for the goods. So, and the goods aren't going to get rejected. Are they wrapped correctly? Daventry, I remember, is super automated and efficient. So if anything goes wrong, the pallet can get rejected. If the wrap that goes around a pallet isn't secure enough, if the height isn't the right height, because it's all automated, it's got to go in and it's got to be spot on. Has it got the right delivery notes on it? Has it got the right kind of financial information on it based on Tesco's manual? If it hasn't got all of these things on there, then it's likely to get rejected, and then that comes back, and that's an additional cost, and then you factored in a cost of X pence per unit for a can, and that's not even turning out as that because of all the back and forth. So it's best to read the manual and get it spot on first time right. And then the last thing is just in terms of service level, right? So a retailer like Tesco works on service level, and a service level is basically how many units you will sell, Tesco will order, and you will be able to fulfill. So if Tesco order 100, they want you to fulfill 100. 99, that will be 100%. Obviously, 99% is sometimes where they're like, okay, the odd one will disappear here and there, or something might happen to it. But it's ensuring that you can do that, and that your lead times are enough to enable you to do that. So Tesco might order day 1 for day 3. So on day 1 they place the order. You need to make sure you're doing everything behind the scenes to get this order ready to be delivered on day 3. So again, another thing.
All right, okay, so read the manual. We got lots of manuals as well, by the way. Invoice ordering process. Look, really important, yeah? We had a big supplier, big brand, last year come to us and said, we want to be in Tesco. Generated by a lot of social media, this particular brand. In fact, it became a very big brand, and then it's not a very big brand anymore. And they said, we're not going to do any EDI. Just tell us what you want, and we'll deliver it, and we'll invoice you. And you're like, no, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, you need the software. And it's like, really? It's like, yeah, you definitely need the software. So this electronic data interchange does lots of things. It means that we get the right pricing, we get the right number of orders, we know there's an order number on it, yeah? So what we call proof of delivery. So everything there is connected. Now, it sounds like, there are things that sometimes it does go wrong, but actually making sure that we've got the basic equipment in place and the systems in place is really important, yeah? It absolutely means that it then becomes a very seamless process from order through to delivery and also payment, yeah? So it is important that we do that. There is a bit which is about consider streamlining. The one thing I would say is try and make sure that you do have a set of accounts that you've been trading for 3 years. It makes it much more easy for us to kind of review the accounts, make sure that, as we said, you're not kind of dealing with people that have already gone bankrupt, because we will do a degree of financial testing against your accounts. However, saying that, it is a relatively streamlined process in Tesco. It didn't used to be. Getting a supplier set up in Tesco takes a little bit of time. Paul is the master of setting up suppliers very quickly in our business, yeah? But it does, I do say, kind of come to us early, yeah? So if you want to kind of start building a business with us in June, yeah, I need you to kind of think kind of 8 to 12 months out, yeah? And that we know that we've got a set of accounts as part of that. And then hitting supply chain and compliance. Look, compliance is everything. It makes everything work really well, and it is an important part of what we do, because it means then the teams can focus on growing your business with you rather than on trying to manage the problems that, because we either haven't got certain systems in place or because the ordering codes are wrong or the product hasn't been set up correctly, that we're trying to then work out whether or not that product has actually flowed through the system. So that does make life a lot easier. And then, finally, and then we'll do some questions and just talk as a team after this section. Is that all right? Talking to retailers.
So the last one is talking to the retailers, right? And we mentioned about, kind of almost going in store, having a look around, or speaking to your different, kind of customers or your target audience. Have a look at the price points. See whether this is actually something that will work for you. Have a look at the fixture. Have a look at the brand. Have a look at the colours. Have a look at everything that kind of almost, how will this brand work? Will it work on this shelf? How do the others compare in terms of price, flavour, quality? This is where you do a lot of research with other people. Bringing people that aren't, your family and friends to taste your product versus the competitors. There are things like panels where you can actually send your product off, taste panels. There are awards which actually do that as well, so like Great Taste Awards, and you can justify having this. Again, it's that justification of this price point, this customer that we want to bring in, and this is who we want to appeal to, and how we drive that together and prove to Tesco that that's going to work. there's a lot of things in terms of, okay, in order to launch a new product on shelf, something has to come off. You know, I was always told back in the day that the shelves aren't elastic. You can't just make more shelves. So your bottom sellers will have to come out for something else to come in. So for someone that's creating a brand new brand, you need to think about, okay, which brand's bottom sellers can you target so that you can actually bring in a different audience and then sell more. A buyer might give you a rate of sale expectation, again, as I mentioned earlier on, of, let's say, 10, and for you it's having to achieve that, but then achieve more. You also got to think about your profit and loss, right? So is the category that you're in very, very promotionally driven? Like, so I use dairy for an example. You know, it's always fluctuating, but there's, you know, a significant amount of products sold on deal. Can you afford to be in those deals? Because if you can't, you're going to sit outside of them, and then your rate of sale isn't going to be as strong as it should be, and then you're going to come off shelf. So again, something to think about. When we're talking about the rate of sale, and obviously actually coming with a bit of a commercial model and telling the buyer that, okay, this is what my rate of sale is going to be, how do you get access to that data? So this is where you actually use the likes of dunnhumby or Circana, or nowadays there's actually a new company called North Star, which are actually enabling smaller brands to get access to data at a, you know, a very cheap price, you know, kind of almost super affordable. So it's buying into information like that that will enable you to go to your buyer with a category rationale to say, these brands are doing X, Y, Z, but we're going to come in and do this. So that means that, you know, you've got 10 brands, but 5 aren't doing well, so replace me for one of those 5, etc. They're the kind of conversations that you want to be having. And then obviously there are things like retail selling price, right? So here in the UK, it is illegal to say, go and sell my product at £3. The retailer has every right to sell the product at whatever they want to sell it at. If you're recommending a £2 RRP, they can sell it at £10. Nothing to do with you. So obviously it's not in their best interest to sell a £2 product at £10 because they want it to sell, but you can't do that. And these are the rules of GSCOP, which is a governing body which makes sure that all the rules are kind of in retail are followed, that small suppliers are being treated well, big suppliers are being treated well, people are being paid on time, etc, etc. So again, you can only go with a recommended retail price, and everything else that happens around that is kind of up to the retailer. So hopefully that's been insightful, and yeah, wish you all the best of luck on your entrepreneurial journey. It's a lot of fun, but it's also an absolute roller coaster. But just sit tight and yeah, keep on going.
Very good. And look, this is somebody who's got a very successful business, has navigated all of those challenges, yeah, and does incredibly well. I mean, look, data and market research, look, once you're up and running, yeah, we give you a certain level of information and data anyway. Get comfortable with it. You don't need to go and buy loads of market data from day one. So it is important that you get used to the data that we give you. And then it's about, okay, how do you work with the teams in order to start looking at each of the categories? I did say we always look at the bottom sellers in the category. Yeah, what products do we need to take out before we can put something in? That's always generally how retailers look at things, so we've always got a degree of churn. My thing is how do you get up that list? Yeah, because as you come in, you don't want to stay at the bottom of that list, and therefore that rate of sale, making sure that you continually drive that rate of sale is really important. So working with the buying teams, making sure that you've got a really good plan for some of the activities. So if you are in a category that does lots of promotions, make sure that you've got your fair share of those promotions as well. And look, there is a lot of legislation, but actually there's a lot of protectiveness as well for small suppliers, and that's good because we work with the GSCOP, which is the grocery adjudicator, to make sure that there are guidelines for small suppliers working with the big retailers. Yeah, things like payment terms if you're a small supplier. If you're a big supplier, you tend to be on kind of 30, 40, 50 days in terms of payment days. If you're a small supplier with Tesco, you're on 5. Yeah, and we also do things like factoring. Yeah, so you can factor the invoices so you can get payments in early. So look, there are different payment methodologies as well in order for entrepreneurs to access and to make sure that it doesn't become a burden as we scale your business up. So that's it from me. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about the Accelerator program as well?
Yeah, if I can. Can you all hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, so the Accelerator program launched April this year. There was a bit of a... Oh, yeah, thank you, microphone. Sorry, you did provide this. Sorry, yeah. So the Accelerator program launched in April this year. There's 27 brands on the screen there that have joined us on our first cohort. We plan to do 2 cohorts a year in April and October. We've just about to sign off the second cohort in October, so hold your rush to me at the end of the program to give me your cards about joining in October. We're talking about 2025 now, as David's point, around 12 months lead time. The program is designed for small brands that are ready to scale. So, you know, we are talking about those brands that aren't currently at your kitchen table, but you've got some kind of manufacturing, you're in some kind of retail. As David suggested, some of the smaller, more specialist retailers are always helpful to have because our technical team will look at where you're selling and judge the risk and due diligence around technical sign-off from that basis. We're looking at the Tesco core purpose. So serving Britain's customers, community and planet a little better every day. So we have 3 pillars that we look at when we're selecting our Accelerator brands. When we talk about customer, we're talking about the trends. That's defined by our future foods trend that look at current trends across the market. They look at what chefs are cooking, where the cuisines are going, what the current trends are from a health perspective. And they've got 3 pillars of that. It's elevate an occasion, adventure, discovery, and health and sustainability. So we're looking for brands, particularly in things like gut health, protein, no and low alcohol, and plant-based, those kind of, when you start looking at the trends across all your social media, when you start looking at where people are moving towards, you know, people have talked about health, beauty, wellness brands. Dupes is a big thing that I understand. Not really my world, but dupes is a big thing in terms of TikTok, apparently. So, you know, those kind of brands that are out there playing in that sort of space are open to us. When we talk about community, exactly the reason I'm here, right? So we've talked about how our customer base is not reflected in our supply base. David talked about 330,000 colleagues and the diverse nature of our colleague base. So we are actively looking for female founders. We're actively looking for black-owned brands. We're actively looking for LGBTQ plus brands, working class brands, ex-armed forces brands. You kind of look at those pockets of brands, where we're underrepresented at Tesco. And then finally, when we talk about planet, we're talking about sustainable farming, sustainable packaging, plant-based conscious consumption, brands that are under that. So when you start looking at the brands that we've got in the program, everybody on there, give or take, I mean, Shagan's on the program. I think we probably own one after the amount of times he does this sort of stuff for us. Cross Demolica are probably just on the cusp, but ideally around that under 10 million RSV, but probably over about 1 million, just to kind of be in that ballpark, yeah, so that we can help accelerate the growth through Tesco. We talk about listing, so we bring people into Tesco. We don't have elastic shelves, but we do work hard to get you listings within your category. So if you're a peanut butter brand, you go against peanut butter brands. If you're a ready meal brand, you go on the shelves against ready meal. You're not going to go on a random end somewhere, you know, 30,000 feet away from the entrance door with a dog food or a skincare and a gin, and people don't really know why you're there. We actually work with you to build a growth plan. So in Tesco, we use this language of a buy, move, grow plan, which we give to all of our big suppliers, and they have, I think somebody referenced them as JBPs. I think Heinz put up there as joint business plan. We don't call them that anymore. We call them growth plans, but effectively, we do look at your service level. We try and help you by giving you coaching with our supply chain colleagues to help improve your service level. We give you access to people like David to Q&A. We help you with our health and sustainability team, but we also then help you build a forecast for your year with us. We do a quarterly review. Now, if you're a new brand into Tesco, you kind of sit with me, unfortunately, but we do give you access to the buyers every quarter. The buyer will sit with you and look at your performance. And when we talk about trade plan, we ask you to build a year's trade plan. We ask you to link that to what you're doing on social media. What are the cultural events? Where are you playing at shows? Where are you deciding to advertise? We'd want to do a 360 trade plan with you because we want to know when you're on promotion, because what we want to do is try and help you get out of the aisle. So the brands that joined us in April, 8 of them were lucky enough to be on our Power Aisle 1, which is the biggest selling aisle that we've got in the store. The first aisle you walk in 50 of our shops, a whole mod to these brands. So, some tremendous uplifts. So look, I'm not here to try. Maybe I'm here to try and sell you the program, but maybe to the detriment of my email inbox and my LinkedIn. Whoever's messaged me on LinkedIn and I haven't got back to you, I'm so sorry. I'll get there. Honestly, I'll get there. I'm on holiday. It's bank holiday. Maybe Monday I'll be sat in the garden replying. But please, look, we're putting a site together on Range Me. We're going to send some links out. If you do get my email, then we're going to put an accelerator page onto Range Me. It'll ask you a load of qualifying questions, yeah, and then we can pull from there when we do our cohorts, get you into Tesco. We'll give you some, if we can't get you into Tesco because it's not quite right, we'll give you some feedback there and then, yeah, and we'll try and help support you on that journey. It could be sort of 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, but we'll help you on the journey if we can. So that's the accelerator program. Sorry, thank you.
No, good. I'm just going to say one thing, yeah? Paul used to work in my category team, yeah? Paul gets the best feedback from suppliers out of any of my buyers that I've ever had in Tesco, right? That's why we put him in charge of the Accelerate program, right? Because this guy gets back to you, yeah? He can genuinely help you with your businesses, yeah? We are absolutely trying to open the door for all entrepreneurs, yeah? I think it's a really important part that we are presenting today because actually, look, we do want to increase the diversity and the inclusion as part of a wider commitment that Tesco's got. And I do say I would encourage you to make contact with Paul and the team, just generally, even if you've got an idea. Yeah, we can help even shape ideas. Yes, programs like this mean that you've got to do a lot of the heavy lifting already in terms of kind of get to a scale. But once you got to that scale, seriously, there is a great opportunity in Tesco to move the business forward. I've got 10 minutes. I just wondered whether or not I want the Tesco team on the stage. Is that all right? And the reason I'm asking for that, because I think there's a general look. I thought we'd do a kind of Q&A, but also, if you do have a product, yeah, that you do want to show us, I'm more than happy you can show us the product as well. I know it's a bit putting you on the spot. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if there are any questions that you want to ask the team, we can answer straight away. First question. Have we got a mic as well? Should we get mics?
There's a mic for you and there's a mic for us.
So for the non-food category, oh, sorry.
Yeah, please.
So my name is Clarissa. I am the founder of the Queen Ra vegan, paraben-free makeup. So for non-food category like myself, you said that day one, Tesco probably say, we need X amount. And if my production company isn't in the UK, how can you work with that?
Oh, yeah. We work all around the world, yeah? Now, the key thing is how do we work with you to make sure that you do have a degree of supply within the UK, yeah? So in terms of your own warehousing, for example, or even putting it into a consolidator. So yeah, kind of going from day one to day 3, but if your manufacturing is in Thailand, yeah, it does take 6 weeks to get here on a boat, yeah? So it kind of, that doesn't work. So we do have, I mean, for fresh products, it's probably also worth talking about how we manage fresh products as well in the same way. Or Paul?
Like I say, I know for a fact that we source from 73 different countries.
There you go.
So there's a lot. In terms of supply chain, we do have a team that sort of work with you. Again, I think David mentioned it, service level is a huge thing. And that is sort of very important. I work in one of the risk teams, so it's just analysing the risk across our supply chain. There is a lot, but then again, they are quite robust and very resilient. So yeah, it is possible.
It is important that you have a kind of your stock is, it makes it easier if your stock is based in the UK, yeah? And therefore you're covering a degree of stock holding based on that original forecast rather than it's a shipment in, shipment out. We don't do ordering from essentially the factory. We generally come to you as a point of contact within essentially the UK. Yeah. Now, some suppliers have distribution centres that are in Europe, and therefore we may need to kind of have a slightly different lead time based on that European supply chain. If they're based in, for example, Germany, and we've got to do the paperwork to get out to the UK and straight in. So there are slightly different ones, but we would expect a supplier generally to hold stock and cover stock within the UK.
Just on that, just before your question, sorry, no order will be a surprise. So our supply chain team work a long way out. Okay, so when you are fortunate enough, or if you are fortunate enough to get onto the Tesco shelves, you'll know 10 weeks beforehand what your distribution is, how many stores you're going to go to. Our supply chain will give you a forecast. We'll tell you how many cases of stock they want for that initial order, what they want for pipe fill, they call, as in the forward order in terms of forecast after that. So work with our supply chain team when you get into our business. There's a lot of experts in our business who will be able to tell you exactly what they think you're going to need, and you can calculate that back in terms of your lead time with your suppliers.
So when you're a supplier, you have access to some of our systems, for your orders, so you will see a forward forecast of the orders that we're going to place, a system called Connect.
So, sorry, I was just going to answer that question. How do you guys then deal with, I'm a supplier, everything seems to be going well, and then you've got certain things like when maybe like the Suez Canal thing happened.
Yeah.
Maybe my stock is stuck there. How do you deal with some of those, I don't say global, but some of those things are just out of your hand? For example, with COVID, all those, things that have happened since after COVID. How do you deal with that as a supplier, and then obviously with you guys as Tesco?
We have a very committed and dedicated team that spend a long time thinking about the issues. So the Suez is a really good example. Yeah, we had the Everlast container that got stuck in the Suez was a problem for us. It was a problem for our general merchandise team. Yeah, a lot of the stock that was on that vessel was actually general merchandise that we were expected to come in. So we would change our plans. Yeah, so for example, a lot of that stock may have been promotional stock that we were due to run at a certain time. We would change our plans internally to say, right, we're going to do a food event instead. So actually we'll delay the general merchandise event, and actually put more food events on so we can manage that system. So I think when it's part of a general issue, I think we understand it, and I think where you've got challenges around production, maybe a breakdown on a line, I think then we're into a much more one-to-one relationship. 5 minutes to go, that's fine. We're on a one-to-one in terms of, okay, what do we need to do? How do we help? How do we give colleagues some instructions in order to make sure that they know what to do before your product comes back online? So we do a lot of mitigation of issues on a daily basis. We're pretty good at it. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add to that? Because I think there is a piece around what we do, but speaking as a buyer, I think some of it's also how we do it as well. So my first buying role was in fish and seafood. 2 months in, Russia invaded Ukraine. A lot of our fish came from Russia at the time. Huge problem. But actually, the thing that stuck out for me was the suppliers that immediately went, I think we're going to have a problem here. We're figuring out how we're going to manage it, but let's work on it together, because the reality is we're always going to have challenges that crop up, like Suez Canal, like Russia invading Ukraine. But actually, how you work transparently and build that trust with your buyer, I think, plays a key part in how you navigate some of those challenges as well. And that can kind of translate to, if you're developing as a smaller business, right, being really transparent about where you are, like, oh, okay, I'm actually working on this, or we're trying to secure that. I think it goes a long way.
Transparency of issues is really important. Yeah, come and talk to buyers. Yeah, say what the challenges are. I think that point, which is when you're setting up your businesses, you'll go to probably 3 or 4 different production sites thinking about who can make your product. So if, for example, you do have a problem, you'll have also the knowledge of how long does it take if I wanted to move it to another supplier. So So look, I think part of those are the conversations. So particularly, look, these are fairly extreme situations, and hopefully they don't occur. But I think it is about the quality of the communication, making sure that you also have a plan, that helps us kind of say, okay, got that. We know what we've got to do in the medium term before we're back into supply. Yeah.
Wants to show you his product, I think. Then we've literally got about 5 minutes before we need to summarise your session, if that's okay.
That's all right. Yeah. Please do. I mean, wow. This is. We don't often do this live. I can tell you.
Can I sit down in the front row and watch
About 2 minutes, because there is a hard close on here, isn't there? Yeah, there is.
Hello, everyone. No. Sure. I'm always ready.
I love it. I want it back, though.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie, and I am the creator and founder of the very delicious, the ridiculously refreshing Riddles alcoholic iced tea. I'm just gonna give you a minute to. It's only 4%, and we have 2 amazing flavors: lemon iced tea with tequila and mango iced tea with rum.
You see,
it is the perfect blend of health and pleasure. It is made from Nigerian moringa tea mixed with premium spirit and natural fruit extracts. So you ask, why riddles? I will tell you why, and I'll stick to your Fever 3 theme, okay? We source amazing rum and tequila, and you ask yourself, why would you have this amazing spirit and not mix it with something that's actually good for you, that meets your health requirements, and most importantly, sticks to the health trend that's going on at the moment? So just like Fever Tree did, they went to source the best quinine to make their tonic. We went to source moringa tea from Nigeria, which is a superfood, which is highly nutritious, which is good for you, which is very healthy. It's 99 calories a can, is vegan, and is gluten-free. So we took this amazing tea that is perfect and mixed it with some alcohol to create this amazing product, unlike our competitors who have amazing spirits but just mix it with anything. We went the extra mile to mix it with something that it's very special. So as you drink it and you're like, oh, this rum is delicious, you turn around the back and you're like, oh my God, it's made from moringa. It's also really good for me and it meets my lifestyle. That is the reason why people buy us. That's the reason why people love us. And that's the reason why we're going to be the biggest brand in the UK. And that's the reason why Tesco needs to list us, and so that we can fly to the sky together. Thank you.
Over to you, Paul.
I'm just going to give this chap back his...
Yeah, he's been told.
Like a hawk. Oh, I'm watching us.
Very good.
Charlie, thank you. We had a conversation at lunchtime, so you know my answer.
So look, I think that is it's a really good example of going from idea, customer proposition, super clear about how you build a brand, and actually the ambition of what you want to be, So I do think it's a great product in terms of proposition, in terms of very clear. Come and talk to Tesco, because it's an important part of what we do.
Thank you.
Well, good. Thank you.
Come on, give a hand up for Tesco's.